Hello and welcome to Pursuit of Perfect System. In for review we have the Arcam AVR 850 AV receiver, and as part of that review I'm doing a setup guide video for you to help you get the best out of the AV receiver, in particular getting the best out of Dirac Live. And Dirac Live is one of the main selling features for the Arcam. It's a fantastic feature within the Arcam, and this video is designed to help you get the best from it. Please check in the channel to see the full review of music demonstrations for the Arcam AVR 850. Don't forget to like the video and support the channel by subscribing. Okay, the first thing I advise you to do is to go to the Arcam website and go to the AVR 850 page and download two things. Initially download the latest Dirac Live software, which currently for this video is the 1.26 software. Now you're going to need that later obviously to run Dirac Live, but before you use that we need to get the firmware up to date. So make sure you download the latest firmware. Currently for this video it's the 4.31 firmware. Now there's several main updates, one major one being the support for Dolby Vision, which is going to be superb for a lot of people, and kudos to Arcam for updating their whole AVR range to support Dolby Vision. But more importantly for this video is the implementation of bass management around Dirac Live. Okay, so you download the firmware file from Arcam, and as you open the file you'll see there are two more files. One is the PDF instruction document, which I'd advise you to read. That takes you through everything, and the other file is actually the two main files that we need for the firmware. Okay, so insert a blank or clean memory stick into the computer, open our firmware file and drag and drop or copy and paste the two main files onto the memory stick, making sure they are the only files that are on there. Next, power on the AVR 850, wait for it to settle down, plug in the USB stick into the rear USB port, and on the front simultaneously press info and display. You will see on the display that it searches the USB drive and should start to install and update the firmware. Wait 10 to 15 minutes for that to complete, and then we need to do a factory reset. Now I would advise you to turn on your TV or your display so you can see what you're doing for this. It makes the process much easier. So what we need to do here is hold down menu on the front panel for 5 seconds, and then you'll see factory reset. Press OK, then press direct, and the factory reset will complete. That's the boring bit out of the way. Now let's move on to the more interesting part, installing and running Dirac Live. Now once you have the Dirac Live software installed on your computer or laptop, make sure you plug in the USB microphone. For a product as high quality as the Arcam AVR 850, I would strongly advise you to buy, if you don't already own, to buy a mini DSP UMIK 1 measurement microphone. This is about the best microphone you can get for any room correction or any room measuring you can do, and you get a specific microphone calibration file for your particular UMIK 1. So I would advise everybody, if you haven't already bought one, to buy one. There'll be a link down below in the description. Okay, it's important before we run Dirac Live that we set up our correct speaker configuration within the AVR 850 menu settings. So either 5.1, 5.2, 7.1, 7.2 or 7.1.4 or 7.2.4. We do that by entering the menu via the remote control or the menu button on the front panel. Select speaker types and you literally enable or disable the speakers as per your configuration. We also need to turn on the amount of subwoofers that we're using, 1 or 2. Now while we're in speaker types, there is something else extremely important to set correctly. Now we must set all of our speakers to large. Now this will seem odd. This is the opposite to what we normally do at this stage of a setup process of an AV product, but this is one of the quirks of the AVR 850 to make sure we get the perfect and best Dirac Live room correction. So trust me on this, I won't take credit for this. This has come from lots of advanced users on AV forums and it works perfectly. So set all your speakers to large and don't panic. At the end of the process we will be setting them back to small again. Okay, next, make sure your AVR is connected to your network via a LAN cable. Open up the Dirac Live for Arcam software and you'll see the software searching on your network for your AVR. As it finds the AVR, it will show you the settings that you've selected, be it 5.1, 5.2, 7.1. You'll see that there. You'll also see the serial code for your specific AVR 850. You'll also see on the front panel display of the AVR it says Dirac Setup Measure Mode, so you know the AVR is connected to your computer or laptop. Okay, click Proceed to the mic config section. In here we need to make sure we have selected our UMIK 1 measurement microphone. The next stage is extremely important. We need to load the correct calibration file for the UMIK 1. Now, for a multi-channel set of measurements, we need to use the UMIK 1 in a vertical orientation, i.e. pointing at the ceiling. Now, the correct calibration file for this configuration is the 90-degree calibration file. This is extremely important. So make sure you've selected the 90-degree calibration file for your UMIK 1, then click Proceed. Okay, that takes us to our output and levels section of the software. Now the first thing we need to do is look at the input gain. Now for some reason the input gain is set massively in the red. Now we need to correct that and put that back to the line, i.e. 0 decibels. The second thing to do is look at the output levels. That's always set very low. So I generally increase that by a reasonable amount and make a note in my mind of what level I've set that to, and that can be important later if we're taking measurements and we get some peaking within the measurements. We can turn that down by maybe 0.1 or maybe 0.2. Okay, we actually set the output volume by running some tests. So if we run a test on our left speaker, center speaker, right speaker, and so on. And it's important before we do this, we need to set the UMIK 1 microphone in the sweet spot at the listening position at ear height. Next, we need to start testing the output from our speakers by clicking on the play button where it says test for the different speaker channels. Then we adjust our output volume so we're getting nice readings. Aiming for our readings to be in the green section, I try and make them fill the green section. Okay, one point of note at this stage, if you find that one of your channels is much higher volume than the rest, this is probably your subwoofer or subwoofers that is going to cause this. Instead of turning the overall output volume down, you just turn down the volume of that particular channel. Now I always try and keep the channel levels and the overall output volume as high as possible, at the same time trying to keep the test level for all of the channels in the green. Okay, once we're happy with the levels we've got for all of our channels, click Proceed, and this will take us to our measurements section. Now for this section I'm going to revert you to the Dirac Live step-by-step guide I've previously made. That will walk you through the process step by step. Bear in mind that is for a stereo set of measurements. This is the exact same process, but because it's multi-channel, make sure you orientate the UMIK 1 microphone vertically, point it towards the ceiling. Don't point it at the speakers, point it at the ceiling. Okay, so once you've taken all your measurements and Dirac Live software has done all its processing and it allows you to proceed to the next stage, do so, and then it takes us to our filter design page. Now this is probably the part that scares people the most who are not familiar with what it is. So we'll quickly start by just quickly explaining what it is you're looking at. So on the screen currently we have, the graph is, the bottom axis is frequency in hertz. So on the right side of the graph is 20 kilohertz, and on the left side of the graph is 10 hertz, obviously bass, 10 hertz, 20 kilohertz being treble. Now the x-axis on the left hand side is our volume, and we've got 0 is an indication of the level that Dirac Live sets for the measurement, and then it's kind of plus or minus any amount there, or how much our frequencies are below where we want them, at below where we want them or above where we want them. And if you look at the measurement you're seeing there's an absolutely huge peak at about 65 hertz of possibly 20 decibel. So that's a major problem in the room, and that's something that we're going to fix. But quickly looking at what we're seeing here, we've got our orange line, that is our target curve, and we'll talk about that more in a second. The blue lines are our actual average, or they are our speaker measurements, and we're currently looking at the left and the right speaker. So if we look over on the right, we've got our channels, and if you click on the channels, you've got, say, front left and front right, which are normally measured together because we want them to be symmetrical, especially for stereo, but we want them to be symmetrical anyway. Then we got center, left rear and right rear, and our two subwoofers, because my system is currently 5.2. Setting a manual target curve within Dirac is actually, I feel, a topic for a whole video on its own, and I will be doing that video hopefully in the month of September, and I'll add a link to this video once that video is made. But for purposes of this video, I just want to give people what I think is a shortcut to getting a better integrated sound across all their speakers, because when you break down this into the individual speakers and try and set a target curve for the subwoofers independent to your front and left speakers and your center speaker and your rear channels, I actually think that becomes very confusing, even for someone like me as a more experienced user. So my strategy for getting perfect integration and making it easier is to link all of the channels together. Set one target curve for all of the channels, including the subwoofers. Optimize, then come out, unlink all of the speakers so that they're all individual again, and then go in and just correct and edit where we're asking for too much from the speaker. That might not make sense, but as I quickly show you what to do, it's actually going to be very easy. So what that's going to guarantee us is that all our speakers are optimized exactly the same, and all we're then doing is taking out below our crossover point what we don't really want the speakers to do anyway, or what the speakers are not going to be do anyway. And now we probably don't need to do that, but I feel I would like to do that as a safety precaution, and just to make sure that we're not asking our speakers to do far more than we want them to do in terms of frequency response. Okay, so to link our speakers together, we literally hold down our left mouse button and drag and drop. So if you hold down your left mouse button on the center speaker, drag it over the left and the right, and then that will then link to the left and the right. Do that for the same for the rear right, the rear left, and the subwoofers. And as you can see, we've now got all our measurements on display, and we've got a one single target curve across all our individual speakers. So what we need to do is make sure that target curve is set correctly. As I say, there'll be a completely separate video talking and discussing target curves, but what I'm doing is just adding some extension to the bass for the subwoofers. As I zoom in, you can see. Now, one thing I will say to people is, when you're doing manual target curves, keep your lines straight. You don't want any curves in there at all, especially not in the bass. Keep your lines straight. So add extra points as you need to keep your line straight. Now, the reason being, that seems to give a more linear bass, a more audibly linear bass. When you have curves in there, it seems to add fat and excess to certain bass frequencies. So keep your line straight is my advice. Up in the treble range, it's not quite so important. Obviously you can have some curves and stuff there, but down in the bass, keep your lines as straight as possible. So once we've set our target curve as we want it, with our good extension in the bass, hit optimize and just wait for wait for the Dirac Live software to do its thing. It does take a little bit of time because it's doing a lot of calculations for a lot of speakers, and if you are running a big system of say for example 7.2.4, that's a hell of a lot of speakers it needs to do calculations for. So I'd say be patient. I always think a cup of tea is something good to have through this process. So once it's done all its calculations, it's going to have one set optimization for all your speakers. Now that for me is the easiest way to get the exact same sound, or the exact same target and targeted sound across every single speaker. And I don't understand why you'd want something different for your rear channels as you would for your front channels, or even your height channels as you would for your front channels. You want them all to be exactly the same. That is how we get cohesiveness. So once that has run through, we then need to go in and unlink our speakers. So all we literally need to do is click on the little link symbol with our left mouse button, and that unlinks our speakers. And if you do that for them all of a sudden we've got individual speakers again instead of them being all linked together. Now, purely for a safety precaution, we can quickly go in and just edit our target curves for our individual speakers. Now, the reason we do this is because we don't want all our speakers being equalized the same as we do our subwoofers. So what I do is I look for really where the speaker starts to roll off in its frequency response, and by that I mean if you look at the individual speakers, you'll see where the line starts to dip off, and it might dip off gradually or it may dip off aggressively. So try and edit your target curve to mirror the roll off of your speakers. Now pay attention to where you think you're going to set your overall crossover between your speakers and your subwoofer, because we want to keep the roll off below our crossover. You're probably at least 10, maybe 20 hertz below where we think our crossover is going to be, and start the roll off there as a minimum. That doesn't have to be if the speakers don't roll off. If the speakers start rolling off higher than your crossover, then roll the Dirac Live equalization curve off there. But what I would say, if that is the case, maybe you should be considering a higher crossover point. Now, there's nothing wrong with using high crossovers. I like high crossovers, to be honest, but the subwoofers I use are capable of producing, sound up to about 250 hertz. Not all subwoofers can do that, and there's also 2 subwoofers in the system as well, and the speakers are very close to our subwoofers. Okay, so you've just watched me go through the process there for the center speaker while I was talking to you. So just to explain what I did, I went to the top and clicked on average for speakers to bring the average back on, so we're not just looking at our target curve, we're actually looking at our measurement. So I then adjusted purely the bass. I left everything else the same, and just purely the very lowest bass, I adjusted the target curve to mirror the roll off of the speakers. Now, looking at the rear channels, the left and right, which is what you're seeing now, you can see there is quite a gentle roll off from about 100 hertz there. So that is what I'm now going to mirror with the Dirac Live target curve. And once I'm happy with that, I hit optimize, let it go through its thing, and then we're done. So what I've done now is we've got the exact same mid-range, treble, upper bass target curve for all of our speakers, and we've also got the exact same target curve for our subwoofers and integration from our subwoofers through all our speakers, because we've done the whole lot at once. And then all we've done is gone in and edited the very lowest frequencies from our other speakers, like our left and right, our center, and our rear channels, just so that it's a safety thing, and so that we're not over equalizing the bass areas for them, because that's going to put obviously extra stress on the drivers, extra stress on the amplifier, and it's just not worth it, because it's going to be way below our crossover point anyway. And it's more of a safety thing than anything. But, okay, so once we're happy that we've gone in and adjusted the bass response from all our speakers to make that safe, we're confident and we're happy that we've got all of our speakers set the same in terms of mid-range, treble, upper bass, and then we've looked at our subwoofers, and that all seems okay. One quick thing, I will check and go into your left and right speakers, because especially if you're going to use left and right speakers for stereo music, just go in there and make sure you've got enough bass extension and a correct target curve there for your speakers. So I actually add a little bit of extra extension, funnily enough, to the left and right speakers, just to really squeeze a little bit more bass performance out of them, which is again one of the magic things of Dirac Live. So that's just a quick thing to point out, obviously, for what we do. So once we've done that, one of the most important things you can do now is save the project. So once you've saved the project, you can come back in and make the final tweaks and edits and stuff to this over time if things are not quite right. So make sure you save it. Save your project, obviously down in the left hand corner. So once we're happy and you're happy with this, now's the time to move on and upload our file to the actual Arcam itself. So click on proceed. That will take you to the next page, and it's literally just a case of dragging out the square button that says AVR 850 down into the space below. A couple of minutes later, this will upload the file to the Arcam AVR 850, and then that's done, and that's all up there. One of the little cool features, which I haven't actually used much, is that while this is happening, also once this has happened, you can use this state of your software as a demo section. So the actual output volume there will change the overall output volume on the Arcam AVR at 15. Because we're still in Dirac, it's actually disabled your front volume knob and your other buttons and stuff on the AVR itself. So, you know, if you've got music playing or if you've got a film playing, you can actually have a listen at this stage and see what you think. Now, I find that a little bit odd. It's not something I've used much, but you know, it's quite a cool little feature. So, and something to bear in mind. Okay, so we are onto the home straight now of this long-winded process. So what we need to do now is go into the menus for the AVR 850, and if you look, you can see in our input config we've got room EQ, and obviously I've saved the file as screen down new firmware, and that's because it's with the projector screen down. So if you look, you can go into that and turn the equalization on and off there. That is how you would do that if you decide you know, Dirac Live is not something you'll want on. I don't know why you would want to turn it off, but you know, each to their own. And if you look at the input section for input config, you can see we're actually on the BD input at the moment. I would say if you want to use Dirac Live for CD or any of the other inputs, just check through to make sure that you know, your room EQ file or Dirac Live file is selected for each of the inputs. Okay, so moving on to setting things up. Now we need to go back into speaker type, and we need to alter or change back all our speakers back to small. So the reason we set them for large is for technical reasons, which I maybe can explain later, but now we set them back to large so that we send all the bass we don't want from the speakers to our subwoofers. So, you know, select each speaker, select it back to small, and make sure we select our correct or desired crossover frequency. You can see obviously I've set it to 120 Hertz, but you know, that's going to be different for everybody. Right, now something really important I feel I need to mention is when we go into speaker levels that Dirac Live has set, if you look at what this had naturally given me, it's given me very oddball speaker levels. For example, it's running the main front, left, right and center speaker at maximum gain, which is just not right to me. And also we've got a huge discrepancy between our surround right speaker and our surround left speakers. So what I think, I mean, to be fair, it actually sounds pretty good like that, but you know, I wouldn't run this like that. I certainly wouldn't run my trim level set maximum like that. So there's two different things you can do here. You can either use a test CD with test tones on it, you know, use an SPL meter, you know, a sound pressure level meter, and set all your channels to 75 decibels, and then maybe set the subwoofers by ear. I actually know what levels I like. I like my front, center and right on level 0 decibels, and generally about a 1.5 dB cut for the left and right speakers, with the subwoofers also on 0 decibels. But that's just through a lot of playing around and a lot of kind of practice and knowing the system as well as I do. But yeah, that's something it's an important feature. You need to check these levels. I mean, it could be the case that because the KEF reference speakers that the Arcam's powering are quite demanding speakers, that's why it's set the gains to the top. But I would always check that. Always check that and cross-reference and make sure that's correct. And the last thing we need to go in and check is just our distances, and you'll see that if you click on speaker distances, Dirac Live has automatically set you distances or delays for all your speakers, and it does a perfect job. Now, for some reason, I always find Dirac Live gives me a slightly off-center central image when it comes to listening to music. Now, one of the fantastic things about the Arcam implementation is that you can literally go in and make the tiniest adjustments to the amount of delay to between the front and left speakers, and for me, I get a better central image for music when I have the same delay for the left and the right speakers. So that's just a little something that you can do, and I actually find that a fantastic feature of this implementation of Dirac Live. Okay, then that is pretty much the nuts and bolts of it. Hopefully that has been helpful to you in terms of a process to follow in order to, you know, get the best sound out of Dirac Live in the Arcam AVR 850. Now, obviously there's going to be different ways of doing things. There's always different ways to skin a cat. I actually think this is one of the easier ways, certainly, of setting up Dirac Live in order to get kind of a great cohesion from speaker to subwoofers. And you know, you can do it manually, you can do it all manually per speaker, but to me the idea of linking the speakers together is so that you can do it cohesively one set target curve across all speakers, and then just some slight adjustments. Hope the video's been helpful. Support the channel by subscribing and liking the video. Go into the channel and see the full review for the AVR 850 and the music demos that we have done for it. There's lots of great content coming your way soon, and thanks for watching. Hope this was helpful.